This is one of the most common questions I get from you guys, and that is when do I start thinking in chess and how long should I spend in the opening, middle game, and end game? These are all excellent questions and the answers are coming straight up. Alright, so this is an excellent question that I got from you guys, and I think it's very good that I address it right now, because this is one thing that will help propel your chess rating from where it is right now to a much higher rating. Now, in the short version of this answer is, you should be thinking, using a lot of your time whenever you get into a position that you have no clue what to do. So what do I mean by that? What positions do I mean? So this is different from every single player. So for example, for me, for you actually, you might not have never seen an opening like pawn c6. You might never have thought about pawn d6. And so therefore, this would be a good time for you to start thinking about what sort of plan and what sort of ideas you would be going for. So many of the time, I see beginner and intermediate players, even advanced players, they see an opening they have not seen before and they just rush, they go for stuff, and then they immediately lose or get into a bad position. Now, why is this so important? Well, unlike other sports like basketball, football, you mess up a little bit. It doesn't matter if you mess up a little bit, because even if you're ahead of 100 points in basketball, there's no way a small mess up will get you to be completely losing. Unlike in chess, one small mess up is all you need to go from a completely winning position to a completely lost position. And I know how that feels, and hopefully you guys do too, or hopefully not. How that feels whenever you have victory in your line of sight, only to have it quickly taken away. So, that's the short answer. You should be thinking whenever you don't know what to do. But the long answer, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated. And this is the concept of calling critical positions. Now, what is a critical position? It's the same definition of what I told you before. It's any given position that you have no clue what to do. So let me show you a random position in which I think this is a great example of showing you why you should start thinking about any given move. So let's say you're playing the black player and you're playing the most common opening in the world. You're playing the Sicilian defense. And your opponent plays knight f3, you play pawn d6 is the basic variation. And all of a sudden your opponent plays my personal favorite opening against the Sicilian, the delayed Alapin variation with pawn c3. Now you're playing on the black side and you have to start thinking about what you want to do in this position. So you could just play something normal. You could just play something like pawn g6, knight c6. You could just rush it. But if you do that, you automatically get into a pretty bad position. And so if I haven't seen this position before, I would spend a minute, maybe 2 minutes, start recollecting my thoughts. I would think about why my opponent's playing the moves he's doing, what is he trying to do, and then play accordingly based off what I know my opponent's trying to do. And maybe think of my own plan while I'm at it. To do that, I hope you guys check out this video over here. That video is a basically 5-step process to find any good move and a pretty good plan in any given position. So, after pawn c3, I've had so many people, 2,000 rated plus masters, who just play random moves like knight c6 and just think that's a fine move. But knight c6 is actually a bad move because it doesn't take into account what white is trying to do here. White is trying to play pawn d4, and you just allowed it. Pawn d4 happens. And after pawn d4, black already has a pretty bad position because he has no space in the center, he's going to have less development, and everything is just falling apart for him. In fact, let me show you this very silly game that's actually happened, in which I played a 2300 rated player. If you guys have been following this channel, this is one of my proudest moments, and I hope you guys see. So basically, in this game I played here as white, my opponent decided to play bishop g4 immediately, I played e5, and my opponent played knight to e5. Now I want you guys to pause your video, take a second and think about what you should be playing here for white. There's perhaps a pretty good move in this position, and I'm not going to give you guys any clues. Where would you move here as white? And so whenever I ask this question, I get so many of the same response. I hear so many bishop e2s, pawn h3, maybe bishop e3, and that's probably the moves that my opponent was probably thinking of. And this was a 2300 rated opponent. And so he was playing very fast, he even used less than 1 minute, and this was a classical game. It was more than an hour and like 20 minutes on both sides at this point, and my opponent played this rushed. Now he should have just taken a second to think, because this position is not very common, so my opponent should have thought about what he should have done, and instead of playing knight e5, which allows knight e5, he should have just probably played something like knight bd7, or stop this opening from happening in the first place. And so the reason why this works is just very simply, I sacrifice the queen to get a queen back up in material. And in this position, you take this bishop because the rook is trapped. And so we sacrifice the queen to gain a queen in material, essentially. But that's not the point of today's lesson. So I want you guys to start thinking instead. Imagine this is the critical position. You've never seen this pawn c3 move before. It's not very common. Think about what you would play, and already you're on the right step to become a very strong chess player. So for me, if I were to look at this position, I would think to myself, hey, my opponent's trying to play pawn d4, and obviously moves like knight c6, pawn e5, even though they try to stop d4, it's not happening. And so I would think to myself, I've never seen this position before, not because I haven't studied very much, but it's probably because this is probably suboptimal for a certain reason. And I would think to myself, if I can't defend d4, the next best thing I can do is maybe do a counterattack. And so I think to myself, wait, knight f6 looks pretty good because it attacked e4 and d4 is not really allowed. And so my opponent played bishop e2, and then I would think to myself, bishop e2 doesn't defend e4. And at first glance, you might think, oh, just take the e4 pawn, easy peasy lemon squeezy. But then again, I would think, what is my opponent's idea? My opponent generally wouldn't just give a free center pawn like that, especially if they're a strong opponent. And then I would think to myself, oh, I see. They're trying to fork my knight and king together, so taking that guy is probably not the best idea. Instead, I should play a move like bishop d7, maybe even knight c6, to stop that from happening. So you guys understand why it's so important to think and the first moment that you have no idea or haven't seen a position before, because you never know if your opponent is setting up something or trying to do something very deadly against you, and because you have no clue about the position, either you didn't study the opening or something completely new, then you can use this time to think about your position. Now, the next question I wanted to answer to you guys is how much time should you be spending in the opening, middle game, and end game? And this is my honest answer, and from my experience, this applies to basically all levels. So, at the highest level, middle level, and also beginner level, you want to be spending around maybe 10% of your time, 15% of your time in the opening, and then you want to be spending the majority of your time, whether that be 60%, 80%, 90% even of your time in a middle game. That's how much time you should be thinking of. Now you might be telling me, Sean, what do you mean spend only 10% of your time? Didn't you just say think of candidate moves? I mean, in critical positions, start thinking about the position. And the thing is, while that is true, for the most part, openings are theoretical things that you should be doing pretty well in, and you should have played maybe 1,000 times your own opening. You shouldn't be thinking about what you need to do in the opening. That just means you haven't prepared well enough. And so if you don't have an opening repertoire that you're comfortable in, playing the first 10 to 15 moves rapid fire, then you should go study up, find a system, find an opening, check out that video over here. That's a good video explaining the difference, and then use that to help you gain a time advantage early on. For me, against so many of my opponents, because I play so many weird openings like the Budapest, like the delayed Alapin, fantasy variation, the Caro-Kann, so many different things that are weird, I often get a huge time advantage, so I can spend thinking about the actual critical positions in the middle game where both of us have no clue what's happening, because in the middle game, after a few certain moves in the opening, there's so many combinations that you don't know what the best options are at that point. And the reason why I say the rest of the time on endgame, well, first of all, that's all you can do, but also because endgames, most of them are theoretical at this point. You should probably know how to win up material, use my Sean's golden rule, which is trade pieces, promote a pawn, and after that, that's basically simple as well. Now, if you don't know how to do basic endgames, there are many videos online that can help you guys do that. Learn the Philidor position, learn the Lucina position, learn how to do opposition, zigzag properly, and learn how to do triangulation. And that's basically all you need to know for the endgame at this level, and you will be fine. So hopefully you guys got what we learned, got the message I'm trying to get at today. Use your time wisely. Don't just rush when you're in a position you don't know. Otherwise, you can fall victim like the 2300 rated player that I just showed you. He played that in a classical game, and he was one of the most embarrassed players I've ever seen in my life. Losing the game, shaking his hand after 5 minutes after the round started. Don't be like that 2300. Think before you move. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed today's chess video. If you guys do, then smash that like button and make sure to subscribe for more thrilling and educational chess content like this one over here. I'll see you in the next video.